are Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Burma. In particular, tonight's event focuses on Burma, and it's really important for us because I think it deviates a little bit from the typical advocacy approach that activists tend to take in the US, which tends to focus on headlines and big scary numbers and kind of, reduce these human rights abuses to sound bites and very specific facts, but forgetting that behind all of these articles that you read in the papers, there's actually a personal narrative and a culture and people who are actually living through those headlines. So it's a really exciting opportunity for us at Stanford STEM and for me personally to present you this array of perspectives on the situation that's happening in Burma right now. I want to introduce our musician Suai, who was performing right before I spoke. She's a top songok player, which is a Burmese harp, and singer in Burma, and she recently moved to the US with her husband, who's sitting here with us tonight. So without further ado, thank you for coming, and I give you Suai.
Beautiful but perpetually in conflict from the early 1980s when my parents traveled the world together. Southeast Asia has seen both instability and development over the years. While Burma is rich with natural resources, the country has fallen from the rice basket of Asia to one of the least developed countries in the world due to the military regime's economic, social, and political policies. My parents' photographs of Burma reveal both the harsh reality of the situation in the country as well as the beauty that still exists behind all of the suffering. The photographs that my parents took in Burma and the stories that they recounted to me as a child stayed with me as I grew up, and I became increasingly interested in the culture, history, and policies of other countries. This past summer, I worked for a small human rights advocacy organization called the US Campaign for Burma, which linked my interest in Burma and my passion for protecting human rights, preserving international justice, and shaping government policy. USCB's mission and the underlying goals of my internship with the organization were to inform and work with grassroots citizens, local partners, and US policymakers in regards to Burma's political, social, and economic crises. USCB is a very small office of 4 full-time employees and 4 summer interns, but these individuals taught me more than I have ever learned in a classroom. USCB's co-founder and executive director, Aung Din, is a former Burmese political prisoner and one of the leaders of the uprising in 1988. A quiet man, Aung Din inspired me to constantly remain motivated and work hard, even in the face of the deterioration of the situation in Burma. Communications and Development Coordinator Thelma Young spent 2 years working with refugees on the Thai-Burma border, and tales of her experiences have further fueled my desire to spend time in Southeast Asia after I graduated from Stanford. Advocacy Director Jennifer Quigley worked in Thailand with the Human Rights Organization for Women for 2 years as well. And she taught me an immense amount about the inner workings of the American government and the preservation of human rights through policy. Lastly, Campaigns Coordinator Myra Dokgepa is a former internally displaced person, or IDP, who spent the first 12 years of her life running from the Burma army in the jungle and the next 17 years as a refugee. Myra taught me how to remain hopeful and driven to help the people of Burma who have suffered the most. Myra has always called herself a jungle girl. Growing up in the Karen state, Myra lived as an IDP for 12 years of her childhood, as the Burma army razed village after village in the region. Myra recalls asking herself why her family was always on the move. She could not be expected to understand what was happening around her, or why she was not allowed to cry.
I remember I was so hungry and I cried for food.
She recounted, "I was told that if I cried, the Burma army would hear me. As a child, I was always scared." When Myra was 5 years old, the Burma army killed her parents. Educated in both Burma and Thai border refugee camps as she grew up, Myra found that knowledge brought an improved understanding of the situation in Burma and a desire to push for change. By age 13, Myra started to understand that her people were being killed because they were Karen, and that the Karen National Union was fighting for their freedom. Upon meeting the people from international NGOs at the border camps, Myra began to learn about the meaning behind the words human rights. Sadly, the killing of Myra's parents when she was 5 years old was not the end of the violence that she experienced due to the turmoil in Burma and the cruelty of the Burma army. Myra says that death became a standard part of her life. Numbed by the excess violence surrounding her, she was no longer afraid. However, physically distancing herself from the violence today has allowed the fear to return to a degree. Living in the US now, Myra has not closed herself to the pain and suffering of her people. Rather, she has realized that life cannot move forward when you focus only on the bad. Myra has embraced the fact that the conflict in Burma is a part of her life and that she cannot leave it alone. It defined the first half of her life, continues to affect the family and friends she left behind in Burma, and is an innate part of her consciousness. Looking back at how far she has come and how much success she has achieved, Myra told me it is a blessing, a gift in life that you sometimes can't understand. She admits that there were times when facing the atrocities in Burma seemed unbearable, and that she is still sad sometimes today. But she has realized that nothing good can come from wallowing in depression and focusing on the cruelty and unfairness of undue tragedy. Myra told me that she has come to understand that you can never turn life back, and that it is our obligation to make the future better. To move forward, you must hold on to hope. Myra has found joy in silly children's animated movies, such as Madagascar. But she also knows that she will always be hopeful as this sentiment comes from within her. Myra acknowledged, there will be time for peace and security, but it will take a while. We must continue to push for change and hope for the future.
They put us in a military car, but they didn't tell us anything. But as soon as they called us that night, we knew we would be made porters. All prisoners are afraid to become porters. We were afraid because we heard that most porters die. Only the prisoners who have money can pay to not become prisoners. The government doesn't have much money, but they do have many prisoners. So for them, it makes sense to use us as army porters. If we die, they lose nothing. But if they use horses or helicopters to carry their loads, the government loses money if the horse dies or the helicopter breaks. But it's easy to take a prisoner and make him a porter. We hadn't gone through any training, and we weren't allowed to rest, so some porters couldn't handle it. If one of us couldn't walk any farther, the soldiers would just kill him. They didn't want to leave any prisoners behind alive. If someone tried to rest without permission, the soldier would beat him with their guns. They would beat them so much that he couldn't walk anymore, and they'd leave him behind to die. People kept dying, my friends kept dying.
When I became a full member of the NLD, I was just doing very simple things at first. But things changed after March 13th, 2000, when we celebrated Human Rights Day in Burma. The NLD had a ceremony for Myanmar Human Rights Day, and we also had a poetry and picture competition. I wrote about my university experience in Burma, about how I was very worried about not being able to continue my education. I wrote that the military government's suppression made me want to fully participate in the political movement. I realized that politics was the new university in my life. Masuman became involved in Burma's democracy movement in 1996, when the ruling military had just shut down all of the nation's universities for 4 years. She began studying at the National League for Democracy office, where she met Auntie, Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, and was inspired to become a full youth member of the opposition group. As a result of her involvement with the NLD, Masuman was arrested by military intelligence officers and taken to Insein prison, where she was subjected to cruel treatment, deprived of adequate food, and held in solitary confinement for 11 months. She was 22 years old. Since her release, she has become a journalist and is now living in Thailand, where she is pursuing her master's degree in communications and a career in journalism.